Welcome to the AT Center at TCNJ. This webinar is titled Assistive Technology for Computer Access and is presented by Kristen Russell. Kristen Russell, OTR, ATP, is an Assistive Technology Specialist at Advancing Opportunities, bringing over 25 years of experience as an occupational therapist. She has been certified by RESNA as an Assistive Technology Professional since 2006. In her current role, Kristen conducts comprehensive assistive technology evaluations and provides individualized training for children and adults with a wide range of disabilities, with the goal of enhancing independence at school, at work, and in daily life. Kristen has a particular passion for supporting individuals with physical disabilities in using computers, tablets, and smartphones more independently and effectively. She works closely with numerous agencies across New Jersey, including school districts, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, the NJ Traumatic Brain Injury Fund, and the Division of Developmental Disabilities. These webinars are made possible through our partnership with the New Jersey Department of Education, Office of Special Education. The statements issued by guest presenters do not reflect the stance of the NJDOE OSE. Please use your professional judgment when implementing strategies and resources within your practice. Now let's listen to Kristen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Russell, and I'm an Assistive Technology Specialist for a nonprofit agency called Advancing Opportunities. And I'm going to be sharing with you all about different assistive technology tools for computer access in this webinar. So my background is as an occupational therapist. So I initially worked in schools as a school OT, and then I got very interested in the area of assistive technology, which was very different. 20 years ago, we were using much more lower tech devices such as Alpha Smarts. So things have really changed and evolved. And there are so many awesome assistive technology tools in the area of computer access now. So I've been working as an assistive technology specialist for Advancing Opportunities for almost 20 years. And in my role there, I do assistive technology evaluations for students in school, for college students, for adults in the workplace. And I also provide trainings to help them implement their assistive technology tools at school, college, work, wherever they happen to be. And I do have my RESNA Assistive Technology Professional certification as well. Okay, so our plan today, we have lots of things to do. First, we're going to talk about how to borrow equipment. We're going to talk about assistive technology consideration during the IEP process, the importance of positioning. We're going to look at some built-in tools. We're going to spend a good chunk of time looking at mouse and keyboard alternatives. We will do a quick review of dictation or speech-to-text tools. I will introduce you to switch access, and then we'll do a quick wrap-up. All right, so first up is the Assistive Technology Lending Center. So through the Assistive Technology Act, the AT Act, each state in our country has an assistive technology lending library amongst other services. Our Assistive Technology Act program is run through Disability Rights of New Jersey, DRNJ, and Advancing Opportunities, where I work, is a subcontractor for them for the Assistive Technology Lending Center, which we call the Technology Lending Center, the TLC. And the TLC is a free resource for anyone who lives or works in New Jersey. And it's a great way to borrow equipment to try it before you buy it. A lot of this equipment is pretty expensive and can be difficult to get your hands on. So this is a great way to be able to do that. So how the process works is you would reach out to our agency, to our TLC coordinator, either via email or the phone. You can let us know if there are specific things you'd like to borrow to try with your students or to learn, more about them for yourself. If you're not sure what would be appropriate, we can help you narrow down a list of some things that you might want to try. We package it all up. ship it out via UPS. You can borrow the equipment for about 4 to 6 weeks at a time. We will put in a loan agreement basically saying that you're going to take care of the equipment and that you will send it back to us. And we will also include a prepaid return UPS shipping label. So all you have to do is put the tools back in the box, put the UPS label on, drop it off at a UPS store, or schedule a free UPS pickup. So it's a really easy way to try things before maybe you're recommending them for a student. Okay, so changing gears a little bit, we're going to talk about AT consideration. So if you're not familiar with that, definitely do a little research on the internet and familiarize yourself with that, especially if you are someone who is attending IEP meetings. During an IEP meeting, an annual review, IEP teams should be considering whether that the student may require some assistive technology to give them better access to their education. So just by considering assistive technology doesn't mean that we have to be providing it. It doesn't mean that the student definitely needs it. It doesn't mean that we have to go ahead and do a full formal evaluation. All it means is that we are considering it. We are talking about it. We are asking questions, maybe brainstorming, and potentially deciding to pursue trialing some equipment. Maybe the team feels that an AT eval is needed. Maybe we decide to do a little research and borrow some equipment from our lending center, whatever it may be. But the key questions there are thinking about what are the areas that the student is having difficulty with? What are the areas that maybe we're not seeing a lot of progress? And even more importantly, thinking about students with physical disabilities, students who are maybe struggling to use their Chromebooks or their iPads, for example, is where are the areas that the student is needing a lot of human support, okay? Especially if the student has an aide who is maybe doing some writing for them, filling in their worksheets, that kind of thing. That's where we really want to take a step back and think about, is there an assistive technology tool that could be enabling the student to do these tasks more independently with less support from an adult? Okay, an example of this would be we have a 6th grade student who has cerebral palsy, is in a general education class with a one-to-one aide. The student uses a power wheelchair that they drive independently. The class is using Chromebooks and Google Classroom. Handwriting really is not functional to show what they know in writing. So their aide is scribing 100% of the work. So if we have this student, we're in this student's IEP meeting, we should probably be asking the question, is there some assistive technology that would allow the student to be doing their work more independently? Even if it's not completely independently, hopefully we are moving in that direction and we are exploring, each year, especially as a student grows and matures, that we are exploring different tools that will hopefully enable the student to be working independently. Then we really just want to be brainstorming through that. Okay. So with assistive technology, the tools get a lot of focus. That's what we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about, are what are the actual assistive technology tools that would all, the mouse tools, the keyboard tools. And that's great, but it's not just about the tools. It's also about the services. Okay. So that doesn't mean the services by someone who is an assistive technology professional. These can be the services provided by members of the student's IEP team, members of the, different members of the school district. So having somebody on that child's team who will help figure out what are appropriate tools, help the student trial them, help to collect data, be there to be checking in and seeing how the student is progressing. Is the device being used? Are there roadblocks that we need to work through? Is something broken? Are we confused about how the features work? Do we need more training? So there needs to be some services provided by somebody that is helping make sure these assistive technology tools don't just sit on a shelf. This is really, really, really key and very, very important. There is a framework that's very popular in the assistive technology school-based world called the STEP framework. It was developed by Joy Zabala. You can go to her website. There's tons of information online, including different forms, but it's basically a simple framework that helps IP teams make decisions on assistive technology tools for a student. So it starts by looking at the student and their strengths, their areas of need, their preferences, their personality, looking at the environment. Often things can be, is a student need to be bringing their assistive technology tools from room to room to room? Are we in one room? What does the environment of that room look like? Looking at the specific tasks, what exactly is it that are the tasks that the student is having difficulty with? What are the tasks that are required of the student? And then once we have done all of that legwork and we have all that information, that will help guide us to what are the assistive technology tools that are appropriate for the student. A lot of times we skip right to the tools, like, ooh, this tool looks cool. I think this would be great for whatever student. But really, we got to start by this information gathering to lead us to the tools to make sure it's the appropriate tool for the student. So whenever we're looking at computer access, when we start talking about different mice and different keyboards, we need to look at the positioning first, okay? So we really want the student to have some stability in whatever they're sitting in so that they can best use their arms or their hands or their head, whatever it may be, for computer access. So we want their feet to be solidly on the floor or on a footrest or their foot plates. We want to make sure that the chair is providing enough support. Do we need armrests? Do we need lateral supports holding the student on their sides to give them more stability? Is the seat slippery and the student is sliding out? We should also be looking at the desk. Is the desk accessible to the student, especially if the student uses a wheelchair? We often need a different kind of desk that can accommodate for the wheelchair so the student can get right up to the desk comfortably. We want to make sure that the desk is not too high or not too low. So, we're setting everything else up for success. As far as the screen, we want to make attempts to make the screen as eye level as possible. So the student, that would help facilitate a good posture. And a lot of times this can be challenging with little teeny tiny Chromebooks. So one thing we need to be thinking about, especially our students who may have some difficulty with visual tracking, which can often come along with students with physical disabilities like cerebral palsy. Sometimes we need a little bit bigger of a text size. We may need to be looking at a bigger Chromebook screen instead of the traditional, very small 11, 12, 13-inch screens. We also want to be thinking about where we're putting the mouse and keyboard. We don't want them to be super far away or, the student have to reach up, down to the sides. We want to keep everything in close with the student in a way that works for them so that they can easily reach their tools. So this is an area to get the OT, PT involved. Likely they are already, but invite them into the classroom, have them take a look at the setup and see if there's any adjustments or suggestions that they may have. Okay, so now we're going to start to look at some of the built-in accessibility tools that are available on students' devices these days. Primarily, the devices that students are on are typically Chromebooks or iPads. If the students you're working with are not on those types of devices, a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about in this webinar are very similar on a Windows computer or Mac computers. They might just be called slightly different names or located in different places, but all tools generally have a lot of similar accessibility tools. So you can always just do a quick internet search and probably find what you need. But for purposes of this webinar and just due to, we only have so much time, we're going to focus more in on Chromebook accessibility tools and iPad accessibility tools. So for Chromebooks, when you go into the Chromebooks accessibility settings, you'll see that they're broken down into different categories. So there's text-to-speech categories, there's keyboard and text input categories, display and magnification, cursor and touchpad. So I'm going to show you here on a Chromebook how you can find some of these tools and go through some of the ones that are a little bit more pertinent for what we're talking about today. I'm going to show you a little bit about the built-in Chromebook accessibility tools. So to get to them, you're going to go into the area, the lower left corner where it says the time, and you're going to click there. And then you're going to look for the gear symbol and click on that. That brings you into the settings. On the left side, you're going to scroll down until you see accessibility. And here are your accessibility settings. So there's a couple of different categories here that are similar to accessibility features on really all devices. There is this accessibility quick options here. This will allow you to quickly turn accessibility tools on or off just from this menu down here. Okay, so you can use that or not. There's text-to-speech settings. There's display and magnification, keyboard and text input, cursor and touchpad, audio and captions, and more things. So we're going to look at the ones that are most applicable to computer access. We're going to start at cursor and touchpad. This has some cool options. This first one here, when turned on, it'll automatically click on something. So you would just leave your mouse over something and it would automatically click on it. So that's like a dwell software. There's mouse keys that allows you to use the number pad on a keyboard to move your mouse cursor. There's face control, which is a new feature in here. A couple of quick ones that you get a lot of bang for your buck are this show large mouse cursor. If you turn this on, you can adjust your mouse to very, very large. I like a little bit of a bigger mouse cursor myself. If you go down from that, you can pick the color. I'm going to choose, here's green. I want it to stand out a little bit more, so I'm going to use this magenta color. This option, highlight the mouse cursor when it's moving. With this turned on, when my mouse moves, this red circle will show up. Okay, so that can be helpful for some students. There is also a disable the built-in touchpad. Normally this is set to never, but if you're using a different mouse, but maybe using the keyboard on the Chromebook, this is helpful to turn off the touchpad. So, when the student accidentally brushes up against it, it doesn't, click anywhere. Then if we go down to mouse and touchpad settings here, if we click on that, you'll have some more mouse settings here. There's a lot of stuff you can look through, but I really just want to make sure that you know this touchpad speed. So there's 4 different settings here. So I can, go super fast, or I can move it down to slow, depending on what my student needs. So those are some of the mouse-related built-in functions. I'm going to go back into accessibility and go to keyboard and text input. And on here, some of the notable things are this top one. If you click that, that'll open up your Chromebook's on-screen keyboard, which is here, which can be useful. Here is where we can turn on dictation. When I turn this on, my dictation button will go down here. There's a switch access button. There's sticky keys, so I'll quickly show you sticky keys with that feature on. If I go here to my Google Doc, if I want to type my name, I can hit the shift key, but I'm not holding the shift key down. I can see up here that my computer is holding it for me. Then I can press the K. It made my K capital, but it then took away that sticky keys feature. So my next letter is just going to type normal. Okay, so this is great for one-handed typists, where it would be hard to hold the shift key and press the next key simultaneously. All right, so sticky keys, I'm going to turn that off. A couple other things kind of in the same category as sticky keys. There's slow keys and bounce keys. So slow keys adds a delay when you press a key. So if you turn this on, you can adjust the length and you'll have to push the letter. So say you're trying to type the K, I have to push and hold the K for whatever my set period of time. So this will kind of ignore, like if I just quickly hit a key, it'll ignore that. With bounce keys, it'll ignore repeated key presses. So if I press the M and it types M, because I hold the key down too long, bounce keys may help with that. So I would have to kind of tweak those settings for the student. So those are a highlight of some of the accessibility settings, but there's so much good stuff in here, and it's just built in and free and really easy to turn on, give it a test out, and turn it off. Similar to the Chromebook, iPads also have built-in accessibility tools. So you'll find these by going into the Settings app and looking for accessibility. Once you're in there, you'll see tons of different accessibility settings grouped pretty similarly to how you saw them on the Chromebook. So there is the vision section, physical and motor, hearing, speech, accessories, and then a general section. So I'm going to show you a little video to give you a rough idea of what this looks like.
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about the iPad accessibility features, mainly as they pertain to students with some type of physical disability. So all of the accessibility options are in the Settings app. And then if you look down, you're looking for accessibility. Okay, so in here they're categorized. There's vision, physical and motor, hearing, speech, and general there at the bottom. So this is a great place to look at, especially after you update your device, because there's often new changes in here. So with the vision section, the tools here that would probably be the most applicable to someone with a physical disability would be to look at the display and text size. Sometimes with people, if people have physical disability, maybe they have some trouble with visual tracking, possibly, and they may benefit from some larger text. So you may want to adjust the text size to make that a little bit larger. That's a pretty easy setting. You also may want to explore whether they like to have their colors inverted, like using Smart Invert. Okay, that may or may not be applicable to someone with a physical disability, but it's good to know about. In the physical and motor section, there's obviously lots of tools here that we can use. So I'm just going to highlight a few. I think the touch one is the most important to familiarize yourself with. So a couple of things here. The first one here, Assistive Touch. If you turn Assistive Touch on, it gives you this little circle thing that you can position different places on your screen. And what this does is it gives you access to different things on your iPad that might be difficult otherwise. So for example, if I tap on that, I can tap my control center. Okay, let's say that's a difficult gesture for me to do. Or I can really easily go to my homepage. Okay, if maybe a swipe up is difficult, I can go to device and turn my volume down or turn my volume up if those buttons are hard for me to get to. So Assistive Touch, it's very customizable, and there's a lot more that you can do than just what I've talked about here. But that gives you an intro. Under touch accommodations is another one that could be helpful. So this is mainly something that you would use if someone is having difficulty using the touchscreen effectively. So there are all sorts of things that you can turn on, such as hold duration. So this would mean that the person needs to touch something for longer than just the typical on the iPad. So with that turned on, you can adjust the time. So the person, if let's say they were tapping an app to open it up, they have to hold it just a little bit longer. So it'll ignore real quick touches on the screen. Ignore repeat is another one that you can also customize. So if someone is hitting something multiple times, it would just act as if it were one touch. It will ignore the repeated taps. The tap assistance gives you the option to use the initial touch location or the final touch location, which could be helpful if someone touches the screen and maybe has to then slide their finger over to the thing that they want to touch. So lots of things that you can test out there.
All right, now we're going to get into some of the fun, different assistive technology tools. So I'm going to start with different mouse alternatives. So these are things that would be alternatives to the standard kind of wireless mouse or USB mouse or a touchpad available on a Chromebook or a MacBook or a Windows laptop. All right. So first, of course, we're going to look at some different settings. So sometimes all you need is to tweak the settings that are built into your device. Sometimes you don't actually need a different, more specialized mouse. You just need to maybe, for example, slow the mouse down. So on the Chromebook, if you go into the settings and accessibility and look under cursor and touchpad, you will see a couple of settings. So I want to highlight a few here. One is called show mouse cursor, show large mouse cursor. If you turn that on, you can adjust the size and make your mouse cursor much bigger. I, for example, have a bigger cursor here that you see that is green. So the cursor color you can also change. So if your student is having some difficulty just really finding the mouse on the screen and is having to hunt around, those two settings can really make a big difference. You can also turn on one that says highlight the mouse cursor when it's moving. So when the student moves the mouse, it'll put this circle around the tip of the mouse cursor to help the student see kind of exactly what they are clicking on. So that can be helpful, I think, with more beginning mouse skills. Another big one, arguably the most important one, is down here where it says mouse and touchpad settings. That will lead you to the to settings where you can actually adjust the mouse speed. That is really, really key. For some students, just slowing it down one notch will be enough. And for other students, maybe you need to speed it up. On an iPad, there are also mouse accessibility tools. So you can actually use pretty much the majority of the mice that I'm showing you today can be used with an iPad. Okay. So if they're Bluetooth, you can just Bluetooth connect the mouse to the iPad. If it's a USB mouse or like has one of those USB dongles, you will need an adapter. So you're looking for a lightning to USB. If your iPad has a lightning charging cord or a USB-C to a USB adapter. If your iPad is newer and has the USB settings. So once the mouse is connected, you'll have some settings that you can adjust. So you can go in and adjust the speed at which the mouse is moving, which is super important. And you can again go in and adjust the pointer color and size. So in this picture here, you'll see there's a circle here with a blue outline. That's what the mouse cursor looks like on the iPad. It's not really an arrow. It's more of a circle. So it does take a little adjustment, but that, can open up a lot of options if we have good use of a specific type of mouse and we want to connect it to an iPad. It can really open up a lot of doors. So looking at some different types of mouse options, I'm going to start here with looking at trackballs. So I'm sure most of you have seen trackballs out there. There's 1,000,001 different kinds. One brand that I always like to look at is Kensington. They make really good trackballs of all different sizes. This one is a pretty simple one called the Kensington Orbit. There's just a left and a right click button. This gray part here, this is a scroll wheel, which works really, really well for a lot of people. This one over here is called an AbleNet Big Track. This has been around for a really long time. It's a very large trackball. It has a left and a right button, but it also has little tiny switch ports on the side. So if you want to plug a switch into here, the left click can instead be activated by hitting a switch. So that's a good option that sometimes we want. Another company to look at that has tons of different trackball and just mouse options in general is Praetorian. You can look on the Inclusive TLC website to see what they have. So this one has one unique feature where they have these recessed click buttons. So this is a left click and it's kind of recessed in there. It's sunken in. So it's not as easy, to mistakenly hit, where this one is a button that kind of sticks up. So it's easier to hit. This, you can also plug switches into. So trackballs are great for students who maybe we need to be hitting the mouse with the side of the hand or with really any part of the hand or the arm. Students with maybe less fine motor control, if we slow the mouse down and use a trackball, sometimes it's a great option. Joysticks are also wonderful. Side note, you may be able to connect a student's power wheelchair joystick as a Bluetooth mouse to a computer. So you could always check with the child's the student's wheelchair vendor if that's an option. But if a student is really successful at driving their wheelchair, you may want to look into a joystick. So again, this is Praetorian. They have tons of different joystick options. These are both Praetorian ones. This is a smaller one. This one is a pretty large mouse. This comes with different options. So you can just pull the top off and you can add on this ball. So kind of like a bigger grasp, or this T top to the joystick. So again, this one here has the recessed button, so you can adjust the mouse speed, you can left and right click, you can also click and drag, which is key. Another thing to be thinking about is using an external touchpad. So these function just like the touchpad on a laptop computer, but they are either wireless or plug into a USB port. So sometimes what's key here is that we can move anywhere, where normally the touchpad, it's of course connected to the computer. So you can't maybe put it in the exact right spot where it would work for the student. So these are pretty low cost. You can find them on Amazon, different styles. This one has some physical buttons, which for some students can be kind of nice. And this maybe would just lay closer to the student, or might sit on the student's lap, for example, or their wheelchair tray, somewhere where they can easily access it. Another thing to really consider are touchscreens. There are touchscreen laptops, of course, but there are also the 2-in-1 that give us a lot of flexibility in how we're positioning the touchscreen. Some even, like the Surface Pro, can detach from the keyboard and become more like a tablet. So there are a lot of touchscreen 2-in-1 Chromebook options as well. So this would be something to look at. And I find where touchscreens can really help is with scrolling. So if we're scrolling down a page of text, the student can reach up and with whatever finger, very easily scroll, where sometimes that's a little bit more involved doing that scroll function on a mouse. So I think it can be really helpful from that standpoint. And if the student is able to kind of pinch and enlarge the text on the screen, sometimes it's helpful from a visual standpoint as well. Two options that are a little more advanced, these are head mouse options. So these are mice that you wear on your head. So there's two different popular brands. This one here is the Qha Zono. So this part right here is a mouse, and here it's attached to a piece of plastic that goes around the back of your head and kind of sits on your ears. But there are other ways to wear it as well, including like an over the head headband. So it doesn't have to be this option. So this is connecting to the computer. So the mouse cursor is controlled just by head movement. So how I'm moving my head side to side, up and down. It doesn't have to be gigantic head movements. It can just be small, subtle head movements that would move the cursor around. So from the computer standpoint, it's just seeing it as a regular mouse. We're just, instead of using our hand, we're using our head. The Glass House is similar. This is the Glass House Pro. So this is the mouse, and it's clipped into this kind of like eyeglass frame here. But again, there's different styles, including an over-the-head style. So it works the same way. It's actually a Bluetooth mouse is how it's connecting to the computer. So small head movement is going to move the cursor around. So the logical question here is, how do you click? And there are several different ways that you can click. A lot of people will use a different switch to click. So there's different switches that can be connected to either of these tools here. So the Glasshouse one has switch ports on the bottom and can have a bite switch, actually just a little switch that goes in here and would go into the person's mouth, and they would be able to bite to activate their click. Another option is to use Dwell software. Okay, so Dwell software is specialized software that will basically allow the computer to do the clicking for you. So how it works is you would move the mouse where you want to click, you would hold it still, and the Dwell software would do the clicking for you. So you, in the settings of the Dwell software that you're using, you would set the amount of time that the cursor needs to be still before it automatically clicks. So this is an example of a Dwell Clicker software program called Dwell Clicker 2. And it just installs this program, and it has this little toolbar. It's actually much smaller than is displayed right here. And it allows you to put the Dwell Clicker to sleep, to do a left click, right click, double click, click and drag. This pulls up an on-screen keyboard, and this allows you to go into the settings to adjust your Dwell click speed. So that's a great option for really anybody, not just for somebody using a head mouse, but really for any of these mouse options. If the clicking is the barrier, using Dwell software could be a good option to look into. There are also some really cool mouth-controlled options. Of course, these are less common. Not a ton of students are going to need these, but for, say, a student with a high-level spinal cord injury, for example, could really potentially be a good option for that type of student. So one here is called a Jouse, and this one is called a Quadjoy. They're very similar. There's a mount for both of them that would connect to the desk. And then there is a mouthpiece that would be positioned right at the student's mouth. And this part right here, or this part here, is basically a little joystick. So the student would use tongue movement or lip movement, or sometimes maybe their chin or cheek, to move the cursor. And then to click, they can sip or puff or use a switch or use Dwell. Okay, all the same kind of options. So these are great options to try for somebody who needs a more unique mouse tool. All right, now we're going to talk about some keyboard alternatives. Okay, so starting first at the accessibility settings on a Chromebook. So we're going to look at the settings that are kind of related to using the keyboard. So if we go to Settings, Accessibility, and go to the section for Keyboard and Text Input, there are a few things here that are worth knowing about. So here we'll turn on your on-screen keyboard, which I will show you in a minute here, that will pop up the keyboard on the screen. Similar to like an iPad. This will turn on dictation, which is key. We're going to talk about that soon as well. There's a button to turn on switch access. Sticky keys is something that I just wanted to highlight on here. So sticky keys is a great tool for a student that is typing with one hand. So sticky keys is on really all computers. It's on the iPad, it's on a Chromebook, Windows, Mac. And with this feature on, It allows a person to hit the modifier keys like the Shift, Control, Alt, the search key on a Chromebook, and the computer will hold that down virtually. Okay, so normally if we're going to make a capital letter, you're going to hold the Shift key down while you press your letter key. With sticky keys on, you would push the Shift key and be able to release it, and then go and push your letter key. Okay, and the computer is doing the work of virtually holding down the Shift key. So it's great for keyboard shortcuts and for capital letters. So sticky keys can be something to look at if a student is struggling with that because they're typing with one hand. So moving over to the iPad also has a lot of different keyboard related accessibility tools, of which I want to highlight a couple. So again, we go to the settings and into accessibility and into the keyboard and typing section. There is a button for typing feedback. This is great because it'll give you some spoken feedback. So when a student presses the letter, for example, L, it would say L back to them. So there's a few different settings there where you can hear each character or each word, but that can be really helpful to reinforce that the student is typing and for them to hear if what they pressed is what they meant to press. So typing feedback. There is also these features, key repeat, which would allow you to adjust the settings if a student is pressing a key and holding it a little too long so that the key is repeating, like MMMMM, when we really only want one M. That is fixable with the setting. Again, there's sticky keys on an iPad, and then slow keys, which would be where the student would have to hold down a key for a certain amount of time before it presses. There's also a setting for the iPad keyboard to change from uppercase to lowercase letters if maybe a student is only identifying, for example, uppercase letters at this point in time. Okay, and then lastly, something that is good to know, maybe just because it might happen on accident, but the keyboard doesn't have to be displayed how it typically is displayed, which is across the bottom of the iPad. It can be a floating keyboard where it's small and this can be moved around to wherever you wanted it. And then there's a split keyboard where a little bit is on each side. So, every so often there might be a student that would really benefit from that for any number of reasons. But I wanted you to know that that is a possibility, and you can Google and get directions on how to do that. So some students benefit from using a keyboard with bigger keys. So I'm showing you a couple of options. The two at the top are, widely used. This one here is the Big Keys keyboard. It has been around forever. I was having some trouble finding it still for sale. I think that both of these options may have been discontinued, but they're still floating around. These things last forever. So if they're available in your school districts, it's good to keep them on hand. So these keys are roughly like a 1-inch square. And as you can see, they also have large print, so it's easier to identify. So those are two big options. Similar to these, but still being sold, is this Jumbo XL keyboard. Again, the 1-inch keys that are larger. This is another device called the Help Keys. This is a pretty expensive keyboard. I think similar, kind of modeled after the IntelliKeys, which was discontinued years ago, but was really something that a lot of people loved and used heavily. So this, I think, is a take on the IntelliKeys keyboard. So those are some options of keyboards that have bigger keys, maybe for students who have some more difficulty with the fine motor task of isolating to press one particular button. There are also high contrast keyboards. Many of the keyboards also include high contrast, like along with the larger print buttons. But if you feel like your student could benefit from larger print, high contrast, maybe capitals instead of lowercase, for example, that are maybe on their Chromebook, An easy, low-cost solution would be to just search up large print keyboard label stickers. You can find these on Amazon or tons of different websites. There are also a lot of lower cost keyboards that offer large print. Here's an example of one on Amazon that also has the backlighting. Keyboards are often, available in different color contrasts for students that need that. There is also this one, the Jumbo XL High Visibility keyboard, which has the bigger keys, but are also high contrast. If you're not familiar with key guards are a great tool to keep in your back pocket because for some students, they really improve the access to the keyboard. So key guards are like little plexiglass kind of devices that can clip onto a keyboard that would help a student to accurately press keys. So it kind of allows the student to more so rest their hand and not be as likely to accidentally press incorrect keys. A lot of times these days, key guards can be 3D printed. They are typically made to order because there's so many different devices out there. For iPads, there's so many different apps that the layout has to be exactly perfect. So sometimes they can be a little tricky to be 3D printed. But I'm going to show you a quick little video. This is a great resource called KeyGuard AT. They are kind of a go-to for making different key guards for a number of different things, whether it's a traditional standalone keyboard, a laptop keyboard, an app on an iPad, whatever it may be.
I'm Mark, and I'm here to tell you about keyguards from KeyGuard Assistive Technology. A keyguard is a device that helps people with special needs use a computer, iPad, tablet, laptop, Chromebook, TTY, or just about any other device. Since every keyguard is made to order, we design it to meet the individual user's needs. With pre-manufactured keyguards, you're limited to only a few apps, devices, and cases, and you need to set up the user's app to match the settings of the keyguard. With KeyGuard AT keyguards, we custom design the keyguard for any app to match the settings you've specified for the user and to precisely fit any case. If you need to block access to certain parts of the screen, change the size and shape of the openings, or just about anything else, we can do it easily.
Moving along in keyboards, I frequently will use what I would call compact keyboards. So these are keyboards that are a smaller size. They're really lightweight. They're super affordable, easy to find, lots of different options. This one on the left side is going to be pretty much just like you took the keyboard on a laptop and took it off and made it in external form. So how this can help people is now it's not connected to the screen. There's not the touchpad in the way that we're constantly hitting. We can now move this keyboard and put it exactly where it's helpful for the student, whether it's close, far away, on the right side, on the left side, whatever orientation we want it to go in. And they're super lightweight. So for some students, they're able to manage and move it around themselves. So I love these kind of lightweight options. Similar to that is a keyboard that has a built-in touchpad. So this looks just like the bottom part of a laptop, only it's like just a few millimeters thick and it's not connected to the screen. So again, we're not using anything real special. We're just now disconnecting it from the laptop essentially so we can put it where we need it. So there's a variety of keyboards like this, many of which the touchpad is on the right side. So for some that works, for some that doesn't. So this in particular one is on the bottom. So this is just another option to think about. There are a variety of different typing aids. So this would be for students who have difficulty isolating a finger. So these may or may not be options that you can try with students. This is the Ally Med typing aid and the Salmons Preston typing aid. These have both been around many, many, many years. If you have access to some splinting material or you're a creative, handy person, you could probably create your own or kind of customize options like this for a student. A newer option is called the 6-digit typing aid. As you can see, these connect to the smallest fingers, 2 fingers on someone's hand, and are generally held in this orientation. So it can be used as a typing aid, but they're also will work on iPads or iPhones. So here we just have to, the hardest part about this one is getting it on and off and making sure if the person does have some impaired sensation, making sure that we're closely monitoring that. Another similar option would be to use a universal cuff, or as pictured here, this is called an easy hold. These are easily found on a lot of different websites and in different sizes and allow different things to be strapped in. So here, this is just a stylus pen like you often get free at like a doctor's office or something, but you could also just put in a stylus there. So again, that could be used on a touchscreen like the iPad, but can also be used as a typing aid to press keys on a keyboard. I mentioned a little bit earlier an on-screen keyboard. So this is what the on-screen keyboard looks like on a Chromebook. So again, to get into that, you're looking at settings, accessibility, keyboard, and text input, and just turning on the on-screen keyboard. This top bar here actually will have predicted words in the keyboard, similar to your phone's on-screen keyboard. It also has access to dictation here. So why I would consider an on-screen keyboard for someone would be if using a physical keyboard just really isn't working well, we're not finding any great options, but we have good mouse access. So with this keyboard, I'm going to click on these letters with my mouse. So that can be really helpful if the student has found a good mouse that they're able to control. Excuse me. And it eliminates the need to be moving to the keyboard, then switching to the mouse and back and forth. Sometimes that is just a lot of work, especially when we're doing it quickly. So it allows the student to just keep their hand on the mouse and be doing this. This is also going to be used for students who are using one of the head mouse options or the mouth controlled mouse options that I showed earlier. So that's the QHA Zono, the Glass House, the Joust, or the QuadJoy. Those are mouth or head controlled, so we need the on-screen keyboard to give us access to what we need to do. Obviously, for the on-screen keyboard with the iPad, that's already built in. Okay, moving along to eye gaze. Eye gaze is commonly or fairly commonly used with augmentative communication device access. So you'll find it built into some of those devices, and some of you may be familiar with that. Outside of a communication device, we would use something like a standalone eye gaze bar. So this is a Tobii PCI. This would plug into a USB port of like a Windows computer, and there's software that goes along with that. So it would allow somebody to click on various places on the screen, or for example, type. So there is a learning curve to it. Sometimes it can be difficult to target very, very small places. Think about clicking on a link on a web page where maybe there's a lot of links and it's hard to isolate your eyes on the one single click. So on the one single link. So sometimes it can be tricky and a little bit more time consuming. It probably isn't the first option you're going to look at, but it is an option out there if we get down to that. Eye tracking is also now built into iPads and iPhones. This is a newer option that was added in fairly recently using the camera on the iPad. So you don't have to have an additional camera to connect in. So if that's something that you're thinking you would like to explore, what I would suggest is that you try it out yourself and get really familiar with it and kind of work out your system and then figure out how you're going to try it with a student. So I wanted to add in dictation into this webinar, even though dictation, we're more so talking about access, but anytime we're looking at, working with a person that is having some difficulty using the mouse and the keyboard, dictation is something that, should really be coming to mind. So even if we find a keyboard and a mouse that work really well for a person, sometimes typing is still going to be slower and labor intensive, maybe fatiguing. So if we can also use some dictation tools for times when a student is writing sentences or paragraph or doing a lot of typing, that could be a great option. So dictation can also really be helpful for a student who has a lot of difficulty with spelling. So dictation isn't perfect, as I'm sure many of you have experienced. There is a cognitive load of using dictation tools. We want to be speaking as clearly as possible. We want to be saying punctuation. We need to be proofreading while we're dictating and making corrections. So we need some type of reading skills, some proofreading skills. And one of the biggest challenges is we're generally going to be in a classroom with other kids who are making noise. So that can be tricky to navigate. Sometimes we can go to a quiet environment, or there might be, the corner of the room that the student can go and dictate. Sometimes these tools are more effective for homework or out of class work. Another option we can try is using a good microphone and connecting that into the student's device. So we're hopefully canceling out some of the background noise and focusing in right on that student's voice. So, looking at a USB headset microphone, this one here is a Shox bone conduction microphone. This is a desktop microphone. So there's a lot of different microphone options that we could consider to help someone dictate more accurately. As far as dictation tools, there are two great options that are built into Chromebooks. So if you're in Google Docs or in Google Slides, you can look under the tools menu and look for voice typing. Once you click on that, you'll get a microphone button at the side. You can just click, dictate your text, click again to turn your microphone off. So that's a great, easy option. Alternatively, if you need to be dictating on different websites outside of Google Docs and Slides, you'll want to turn on the built-in dictation tool. So that's found in Settings, Accessibility, Keyboard and Text Input. It looks like this. You're going to want to turn that on. Once that's turned on, you're going to see down in your taskbar a microphone button. So let's say you're in Google Classroom and your student needs to be type a comment to someone. They could click here. It will turn on their microphone. They dictate their text and they click again to turn it off. There's also a keyboard shortcut that they could use for that as well. So that's a great option to show students, and it works pretty well. On an iPad, I'm guessing most of you know that there is a dictation, a microphone button right on the side of your space bar. If this isn't working, you might have to go into the settings and enable it. There's also a setting, under settings, general keyboard for punctuation, whether you wanted to do auto punctuation. So there's pros and cons to that. I generally like to turn that off because we're teaching students punctuation. So if we're going to be using dictation, we want the student to say comma, period, exclamation point, question mark. So that's a great option if you're on an iPad. We're going to talk a little bit about switch scanning, or using switches to access a device. Mainly, we're going to talk about using a switch to connect to and control an iPad. So for some students whom were not able to find a good access method with all of the other things that we talked about, with using alternative mice, head mouse, trackballs, joystick, finding different keyboards, using eye gaze. If none of those options are working for the students, sometimes we might end up considering switch scanning. So using a switch, which is like this button here, to control, to select things on the screen. So you can do this for an iPad. This is commonly used for augmentative communication. This is like an access method for that, but could also be used to access, to do typing or open and close apps, all of that kind of thing. So there's a lot of factors to consider. This is pretty involved, but I'm just going to try to kind of run through the basics. So there are tons and tons of different types of switches. So this is like the classic jelly bean switch, but there are switches that are smaller. Like this is a tiny sensitive switch called a microlight. There are switches like this one. This is a pad pal, which are flat and you just have to touch it. You don't have to actually push things down. This one's called a candy corn switch, and this is a proximity switch. So this you actually don't even touch. You just have to get close to and it'll activate. Now, switches don't directly connect to an iPad. You can't just plug them in. You need what's called a switch interface. This is an example of a switch interface. This one is called the Bluetooth switch interface made by AbleNet. So this is what connects the switch to the iPad. So this is Bluetooth connected to an iPad. This switch plugs into this and it helps everything communicate. So one of the things you have to think about is, where are you going to put the switch? Is the student able to hit it with their hand? Are they going to use their elbow? Are they going to use their foot? Are they going to use their head? So there's all sorts of factors with that. So you have to find where you're going to put it, where the student can access it consistently. And then once we have that, we can kind of start working on switch skills. What I'm doing is I'm in the Notes app, and I'm going to show you how the switch scanning works to actually be typing letters. Okay, so what you'll see is a red box moving around, and you can kind of hear me hitting a switch. So here it's automatically scanning. This is called automatic scanning.
Select tap. Okay, and now I'm ready to type. Okay, so
I'm going to write. So the iPad is moving to the different areas.
All right, so we're going to wait until I get to the H.
And I'm going to pause it here a second. And it's basically scanning in groups. So it'll outline in red chunks of text. And then if I click my switch and select that chunk of text, then it'll scan each individual item in that group of text. And again, I have to hit the switch at the right time when the red outline is on what I want it to click.
Now I got to hit the tap button. Okay, that's the kind of tricky part. So now I'm waiting for the row that the E is in. I select the row, I select the group. I press on E, I press tap.
So that just gives you a little taste of what's called automatic switch scanning. As you can see, it's more labor intensive. The person has to be able to hit it at a specific time, which for some students can be really tricky because it takes them a little time to get their body ready to press the switch. So sometimes instead of doing automatic scanning, we'll use two switch or step scanning, in which there are two switches. One of the switches moves that red box and the other switch selects it. So that is a lot more switch clicks, but it gives more control to the student. Okay. So there's two different ways and two different kind of methods of switch scanning there. I just wanted to put in some resources for developing switch skills. So some students are going to need, to build from, smaller steps, build up to switch scanning, because it definitely is a cognitive and physical task. There's a lot going on for that. So there are some good resources here of different places that you can go that are Switch accessible websites with different games to help build skills. There are also non-computerized different tools here that switches can connect to allow students to work on their switch skills while playing games or activating different appliances. These are all things that are in our Technology Lending Center. There's a great Instagram follow, Mr. Jeff Adapted PE. He uses a lot of different switches. He's a gym teacher and he does all sorts of very creative things. So it's a great follow. And so if you're looking for switches, I would encourage you to go to the AbleNet website or Enabling Devices or the Praetorian website. Those are websites that are going to show you a lot of different examples of switches to kind of help you brainstorm what might be applicable for your student. I wanted to show you a couple of newer, unique tools that might come into play with computer access. This one is called a functional hand. It's in the Technology Lending Center. It's basically this piece of what I think is 3D printed material. That's a grip. And then it has this bungee cord on it. So it's really easy to put different things in it and secure it. So here's a crayon, a whisk, a pen. You could use a stylus, any type of thing that fits in there. It's very, very flexible. So this could be a good way to adapt an activity or to adapt, a typing aid, for example. This one is called a guided hands, and it helps people who have limited dexterity or maybe weaker muscle tone or weakness in their arm or hand. So it's basically this platform here that you can put different things on. So here's an iPad, but you could put a piece of paper or maybe a keyboard, whatever it may be. And the arm straps into, it's a little arm strap here. And using this kind of grid system, it helps the user to move their arm and support their arm so they can do whatever the task is in front of them. So here you see a student has a pen in there, and here there's a stylus that's added in there. So this could definitely be a computer access potential tool. I wanted to wrap up with a little case study. This is a similar case study as I talked about during the AT consideration. So we have a student with cerebral palsy in an inclusion third grade classroom, uses a power chair with some assistance, slightly below grade level in most areas, able to handwrite letters, but it's very slow, mostly is scribing to their aid. Their class uses Chromebooks and Google Classroom, but there's also a lot of paper and pencil. The student types with one finger on their right hand. They have lots of repeating keys or pressing incorrect keys, and they're having difficulty using the touchpad. So the aid is doing a lot of the mousing. The student does great with an iPad at home for videos, so they're used to using a touchscreen. What might be some of the next steps? What might be some things that we could try? So I'd encourage you to kind of pause, think through what we have talked about today. How would you approach this? What might be things on your list that you would try? So just a couple of things that would come to my mind would be, first of all, looking at dictation. Is the student ready to start doing some type of dictation to get away from scribing as much to their aid? For the keyboard, maybe we can get our hands on some different keyboards, or maybe starting first with looking at the keyboard settings. Is there something we could do about repeating the keys? Are there some strategies we could use about pressing the wrong keys? Maybe we need to try a bigger keyboard. Maybe a key guard would help. We could certainly explore using sticky keys since the student is just typing with one finger on one hand. For the touchpad or their mouse, since the touchpad is different, maybe we need to tweak the speed of the touchpad. Maybe we can try some other things. Could we try a joystick or a trackball instead? Could we explore using a touchscreen Chromebook and see if that worked? Are there some things that we could do on an iPad that would be more efficient than the student instead of using a Chromebook? So none of those are the right or wrong answer necessarily, but it gives us a list of things that we could try. And as we keep trying things and paying attention and keeping some data, hopefully our list narrows down and we can start to focus in on what would be some good options for the student to do a longer term trial of. So hopefully that is helpful just to kind of think through. So here's my contact information. Again, my name is Kristen Russell. My number and my email are there. And if you ever have any questions, I'd be happy to troubleshoot with you or to explain something more thoroughly. So feel free to reach out, and I hope that you learn something that you can take back to your classroom to help your students out. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us. Are you a New Jersey educator looking for support or professional development tailored to your district's AT needs? We offer free, customized training and coaching for NJ teachers, paraprofessionals, and families. From hands-on workshops to individual classroom support and small group facilitation, we're here to help. Visit us at atcenter.tcnj.edu to learn more. Have a question? Contact us at atcenter@tcnj.edu. Please like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more content on all things assistive technology.